Good morning. How is everybody doing today? Good. Before I get going, I just want to say, obviously we're thankful to be here together. We've had a good year, and I hope today, at the end of this, we can learn a lot, we can laugh, we can enjoy each other's company, and we can take some action. So the 4 goals for today are learning, laughing, taking action, and enjoying each other's company. So, if you don't know me, a little bit about this, like Larry explained, by trade, I've had the opportunity to work as the CEO of Physigrow and develop biological products that we use today in Agronomy RX with the idea of incorporating physics and water quality into agriculture. So I'm going to hit some highlights today. They kind of go over all that, but I want to invite you to ask questions and engage and make this as much of a learning opportunity as we can for you. I hit on taking action, and so I want to bring up some highlights, some good news. We as a family had an opportunity to celebrate some action recently. Just this spring, my younger brother graduated from the police academy, became a new sheriff in our home county, and late last night, my other younger brother graduated from his nursing program and earned his nursing degree today. So the rest of the family is back home in central Indiana, enjoying it with them, and their older brother couldn't be more proud today. So I want to thank them for the first responders, the sheriffs, the nurses, all the military personnel overseas that work hard so that we can come here and do what we do and farm and grow food for everybody else. So the joke around town, if you ever get a chance to go back to central Indiana, the long-standing joke, if you run into my folks, when people ask, how many kids do you have? My dad will always say, we have 2 wonderful sons and another one. So standing before you today, ladies and gentlemen, is me, the other one. I want to take you back in time and look back through some things. I want to also introduce you to a couple friends that may be fond memories. This is Stretch Armstrong up on the left, the old metal Tonka toy that we all played with, the Rubik's Cube, and who could go wrong with a little rock'em sock'em robot, right? How many of you had any of these toys growing up? Raise your hand if you had any of these toys. Yeah. Memories. How about a little, by the way, anybody else's favorite rock'em sock'em robots? A few? Good. Okay. How about the old Etch-a-Sketch? Okay. The concentration game, the Play-Doh. Anybody else have any of those? Okay. There's a book once written by Robert Fulghum, said everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten. And so I want to take you back to look at some of the things that we did growing up. A lot of fond memories, a lot of cool toys, and a lot of things that we picked up and learned that we still use today. So the cool thing about learning and making changes is that we do a lot of the same things that we did when we were kids because we recall some of those memories, and we've changed some as well. But sometimes the changes that we make don't always reflect what we do and what we've learned. So what was different between Stretch Armstrong, the metal Tonka truck, the rock'em sock'em robots, and today going out and ag? The world, the economy, the challenges, new extremes, new life, maybe. So I want to take a moment and just think back to the Stretch Armstrong days when we had our childhood memories and think about why it is that we do what we do and we work hard to do the things that we do. So here's our focus, okay? As we face 2025, I'd like to address a few things. Okay? Human health, the real why that we do this, how and why the microbes can help us in this role, how we convert our nutrients, how we feed those microbes, the role of cover crops. A big question that I get a lot is how we deal with detoxing the synthetics and the metals, okay? How we manage the oxidative stress, a little bit of field data, some physics concepts that I use day to day to incorporate in the products that you guys get to use. Okay, the BioGreen, the MicroChop, the MicroBoost, and the Accelerate Pro. And then I'm going to talk a little about herbicide mitigation, and we'll wrap up with some photosynthesis and some strategy. Okay? So to do this, I'm going to do a little demonstration. Larry, can I steal you?
Sure.
I had to think of who I could get that had the most hot air available, so I think Larry will demonstrate. Okay, so we're gonna do a little demonstration. Okay. Ready to take this? All right. So what we're gonna do, Larry, is close your back. I gave him one job. Okay. What I want you to do is to take this bag and hold it right up to your face, and we're each gonna take 3 breaths and try to fill our bag. Okay? Okay, see what you got. Like I said, more hot air. Okay, so when we hold the bag right up to our face, we can maximize the output of what's in our lungs and capture that. Okay? We get some response. However, if we change our approach a little bit, what we're going to do now, we're going to hold the bag away from our face and take the same 3 breaths. Okay, so much bigger response, right? Okay. This is called Bernoulli's effect. And what we just showed is by holding the bag away from your face, you're not only getting the air that you produce from your lungs, you're also encouraging the air molecules around it to force into the same bag. So you're getting kind of a Venturi effect and encouraging the air around it to also be drawn in. So the results, like we showed, were exponentially higher than what we can produce ourselves. Okay? So that's going to be important for what we're going to talk about later today. Let's give our lovely Vanna White a round of applause. How many of you have seen that before or heard of Bernoulli's principle? Okay. So the reason that that's important is because it's a strategy that isn't just a concept that we use in the design of some of our products, okay? But it's also a principle that you can use to enhance what you're seeing on your farm biologically. I'll explain. Okay, so our goal as a company, like Larry said, is to design these products with the intent to help growers reduce synthetic inputs, remove fertilizer, improve your yields, improve nutrient density, and mitigate toxins. So one of the ways we have to do that is to involve all parties, like Larry said, to get the full spectrum of action inside the soil zone. Here's why. I've showed these before, but over the last few years, there's a trend going on in our food. So this is some data from 1960, 1990, and 2002 that highlight vitamin C content in 3 different crops. So the green is the green cabbage, brown is a potato, and the purple is onions. And I don't know if you can see it in the back, but the trend every year is there's a little bit less vitamin C in each of those 3 crops over time. So we're losing some nutrient densities. The same can also be represented when we look at how many pounds of anhydrous it takes to yield a bushel of corn. Okay, so back in 1970, 1 net pound of anhydrous would approximate to about 39 bushels of corn. Okay? In 2000, by 2000, that same pound of anhydrous was netting about 15 bushels. Okay? And today, that ratio is about 7.5 per pound. Okay? And it's continuing to downward spiral. Okay? So the trend that we're seeing is we're using all these synthetics, we're changing our approach, we're using GPS, we're getting products that are supposed to aid us in this process, but we're seeing a decline in our return and in the nutrient density of our foods, which is a problem. This is an X-ray of a phenomenon called tech neck. How many of you have ever heard of tech neck? Okay, a few of you have. Okay, so this is what happens to our necks when we constantly look down at our cell phones. And as we look around, we all do it. We all see the text, get the email, read the notification. It's a habit that we now have day to day. And the response is not only something that we feel, but it's actually changing the structure of our bones. Okay, so on the left, we have an x-ray of what your neck should look like. This is a normal C-shaped pattern that allows the nerves in your neck to flow down uninhibited to wherever they need to go. On the right, this is an x-ray of someone who's got a pronounced posture change as a result of looking at their phone. So what you see, where it's highlighted there in the red, are two impingements on a nerve that affect movement or function somewhere down the line, in an arm, in a leg, in a organ, your heart, your lungs, whatever. And all of these things are happening kind of unbeknownst to us. So I use this as an analogy, one, because it's something that we can all relate to. We all have a cell phone. We're all constantly looking and seeing text. But also because it relates to what we're doing in agriculture, in the sense that by functioning, we sometimes inadvertently have things that cause nerve impingements that are limiting factors in our operation that we don't even realize. And I'll get to that. One of those things would be heavy metals. So metals, especially excessive accumulations of those, cause enzyme inactivation. So when you have a situation in your soil where you have an overload of metals, okay, cadmium, aluminum, barium, things like that, it will stop the activity of certain enzymes, and it won't allow those enzymes to be taken up into the plant like they should. So studies have shown that these long-term, heavily contaminated soils don't have the same microbial activity that other soils do. So it's kind of counterproductive for us to be only inoculating biologicals or only using biostimulants if the root of the problem is a situation that doesn't allow those to have successful growth. So one of the strategies that we use is to try to address both. Here's another visual of what that looks like. Okay, so heavy metals are actually linked to not only soil microbes, but uptake, free radicals, the formation of lipids and proteins, which is directly correlated to your test weight, and then obviously heavy metals that cause impingements, causing problems further up the plant, are linked to oxidative stress. Another little article showed that, this is from the National Library of Medicine, okay? And it said, among agricultural sources of heavy metals, fertilizers, pesticides, and sewage sludge are the most common. And I put that in there because this is something that we use pretty frequently in our operations, incorporating these things. Okay, so how do we deal with this? Okay. Firstly, we have to try and work towards eliminating the sources of our contamination. So manures, high salt fertilizers, if you're identifying certain products that have heavy levels of aluminum or cadmium or things like that, to work towards trying to remove those from the program. Okay? The other couple strategies that we have is to improve metabolic activity. Okay? Just like us, when we have an injury or we have an illness, we have to help our immune system to fight whatever is going on in our outside environment. So to improve the plant's metabolic activity, we provide good nutrition, we support the biologicals giving them nutrition, we manage oxidative stress, which we'll talk about some more. We have to encourage respiration, and a lot of those things can be done with our product Micro Boost, which is a 5-way sugar that has some of these acids that we'll talk about here in a second, and to relieve the stress as it's healing and dealing with those injuries. And then, like I said, promoting the biology. Biologicals have a very unique ability to deal with certain contaminations if they're in the right situation, you have the right players. So when you're providing a quality supplement like BioGreen that has additives and bugs in there to manage not just the nutrient side, but the toxicities, then you're adding workers into a situation that can help fix the construction problem right now, right away. How are we doing on that? How do we feel? Pretty quiet, so I don't know if it's good or bad, but we'll try. Okay. Also put this in, I want to encourage you. I hear a lot, especially as I travel and talk to farmers and get out in the fields, I hear a lot of people say, well, the agronomist told me this, or the chemist told me that, or the biologist is recommending this. And I just want to remind everybody that there's a role and a lane for everything, and they all work together. So looking at the chemistry side, looking at the biological side, looking at the physics side, there is a role where everybody works towards the same common goal of getting the soil healthy and producing the highest yield. So what we're trying to do with the Physagro products is incorporate all of these aspects into one single line of products, something that will address the physics side, the biological side, mitigate the chemistry, and help promote the overall balance of soil in the health of the life microbiology below. Inflammation. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inflammation a lot here lately, especially in the 4-degree mornings out in Webster City. What is it, and how is it important to plants? So in our bodies, inflammation is a response. Okay? Usually to injury or an infection. Okay? But a lot of it promotes disease. So we use inflammation to heal. When we get punched and get a bruise, that's our body's way of reacting to that and addressing it by sending the good guys, the leukocytes, and the white blood cells to an area where we need it. But too much of this over an extended period of time causes situations where your body just accepts that as the new normal, and you start to develop disease. Okay? Heart disease, allergies, eye disorders, asthma, diabetes, obesity, and injury, all linked to inflammation, which is a response. Okay? It's irritation. There's anti-inflammatory foods that we can consume to help us, and medications that deal with this. But the root of the inflammation is the response to what we're seeing beforehand. So the question is, okay, we're talking about inflammation. We know that this happens in our bodies. How is that relevant to us? Do plants have inflammation? Do they have chronic stress? And I believe they do. It may not look the same way that we see it in our bodies, but they respond and they tell us, they can indicate that they also are feeling inflammation and are under significant amounts of stress. So that might look like abnormal tissue, okay? Wilting, tissue death, defoliation, okay? Abnormal growth, dwarfing, okay? And extended periods or instances of disease, tar spot, wilt, mold, okay? All these things happen. Raise your hand if you've seen these symptoms and didn't realize it was linked to inflammation in the plants. A few of us, okay? So if we know it's happening in people, and when we feel it, we feel pain, we take action. We take ibuprofen, we take some sort of medication, we take a hot bath, whatever the case may be, but we see it in plants, we a lot of times sit back and don't. So one of the points of intention that I'm asking today is to be observant of what the plants are telling us and think about how we can respond and help them to further help us. So just like us, plants have to relieve stress through removing the problem, through removing that inflammatory response, okay? So to do that, to alleviate plant stress, we use sugars, a lot of them, okay? Especially the microboost, where you've got a balance and a proportionated blend of the right 5 types of sugars that the plants can use to move through metabolic processes and get those inflammatory markers out. Okay? Ethylene inhibitors are good, limiting oxidative stress and encouraging, like I said, movement, respiration, and airflow. Okay? Just like in us, the more we move, the more oxygen we get into our tissues, the more likely it is that we can reduce oxidative stress and not have inflammation. All right, so I got another little demo that I want to show you to kind of put this in perspective. I need somebody else that has a ton of hot air. silence. Maybe a smoker? I won't do that. I won't do that. Troy, can you come up here? I was thinking about how we demonstrate some of this. So bear with me, I know it's going to be hard for some of you to see in the back, but if you need, I'll leave them up so that we can kind of showcase this a little bit later on. Okay. Look at this beautiful guy. All right, so we have two beakers up here that both have water, okay, and a compound called phenol red. So in each of these beakers, we've got the same amount of water and the same amount of an indicator dye. And the indicator dye, called phenol red, is red right now because the water that's in it is slightly alkaline. It came from the tap water, so it's a little bit alkaline. What we want to demonstrate is what happens, okay, when we get proper airflow and proper gas movement into a situation where there's a lot of moisture. So what we're going to have Troy do is I'm going to give him a straw. And Troy, if you would, take the straw and just blow into this water solution. So all this is just water and an indicator dye. Just blow bubbles into the mixture. You can keep going. It's going to take a lot. So when I count to 3, go ahead and start. Just kidding. Okay. So keep going. It's going to take a few. But so what Troy is doing right now is he's adding air, okay, heat and air into this mixture of water. Okay, see it? Hold it up, Troy. Can you guys see what's happening right now? Okay. I'll show you in a minute. Here's the reference. So hold it up. We have two different colors. Troy's beaker is now a lighter yellower color than the untouched water that has just the phenol red in it. So what did Troy add to his beaker that mine didn't have? Carbon dioxide, which is slightly acidic. So Troy, and the magical energy transfer that Troy is, takes carbon dioxide and adds it to the water, and that new mixture forms carbonic acid. And that acid changes the phenol red from the red to the yellow. Okay? I'll get to why that's important. Thanks, Troy. Let's give Troy a round of applause for coming out. So a lot of times when we see soils that look like this, okay, slightly alkaline, our response typically would be what? We need to fix it. Let's add some acid. Let's add, sulfur, lime, whatever the case may be. Okay? What Troy just proved is that with a little bit of airflow, heat, and energy, we can create a little bit more of an acidic environment. So this is happening every day in our soils like this. Troy adds carbon dioxide gas. That gas reacts with the water and forms carbonic acid. Okay? When free radicals are available, that becomes bicarbonate. Bicarbonate turns to carbonate. Carbonates can be used for other things and other sources for plant function, metabolites, other biological activities. What in our soil produces a lot of available carbon dioxide? Microbes. Okay? So if you have a very active soil that's balanced biologically, you're getting these reactions. You're producing carbon dioxide all by itself. Okay? In situations where we don't have this, we use products like the MicroBoost to enhance carbon dioxide flow and encourage this reaction so that you're getting some of these things on a more natural basis until the bugs are able to sustain themselves. Okay? So this is a visual representation of what should be happening in our ground without the need for adding a synthetic, coping with some sort of mechanism. Okay? This is a part of a larger chain of reactions called redox. Okay? Redox reactions are the movement of hydrogen ions that make things alkaline or acidic and make certain compounds available to the plant. Okay? One of these things in the reaction, like I said, the movement of hydrogen, one of these things is available a lot of times, okay, when you get gas flow and air movement happen. Okay, so if you're having redox problems, oxidative stress being the leader of that, you don't have significant amounts of air movement, oxygenation happening, and you're getting some of those delayed inflammatory responses, disease, insect pressure, and things like that. Let me give you another point of reference. Molecular size. A lot of times when we travel, we hear things, well, I'm adding humics, I'm adding fulvics, adding aminos. All those things are great, but I liked this slide because it gives you a reference for what the scope and size of those things really are. If we were to take a bite of a watermelon, like a humic, it would take us a while to get through the entire watermelon. Okay, aminos, a little bit more manageable as an orange. Carboxylic acid, all the way there on the right, cherry size compared to the pumpkin on the left. So the messaging in this is, if we do things at a microbial level, at a cellular level, we can get better absorption and we can get a faster response to lead to the chelates, the aminos, the fulvics, the proteins, the ATPs, and all the things that we need the plant to do to achieve the goal. Okay? Long article, okay, but this relates to redox, so I'll hit the highlights. National Institute of Health says the disturbance of redox homeostasis, meaning if you have an imbalance in redox reactions, your lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids in your body may be damaged, okay? This is a consequence of oxidative stress and free radical uncontrolled development, okay? Why is this important? Like I said, we've talked redox, okay, but redox is the functional messaging, functional approach to all the basic formations of sugars, okay? This is a very simple redox reaction. It happens every day in the plants. Does anybody recognize what this is? You got glucose.
Photosynthesis.
This is photosynthesis, okay? So this reaction has to happen for the plant to make its own food. It's taking light, it's taking carbon dioxide, and it's building sugars. Okay? On the flip side of this, we always emphasize photosynthesis, which is great. We can build sugars, we can encourage gas flow, we can use it, we can see leafy greens developing, but there's a flip side to this, and that's cellular respiration. And the respiration side, which happens at night, is the plant taking all the food and energy that it built and using it to make proteins. Okay, so if you look, we've got glycolysis on the left, carbon dioxide happens, the yellow bubble at the bottom there is 36 ATP, that's a protein, okay? And that's what has to happen. So the respiration has to happen for the plant to build proteins, okay? So that means redox has to happen, that means gas has to be available, that means sugar has to be made, that means all the nutrients had to be in place before that, and all of that had to happen uninhibited without nervous impingement for that chain to be complete. So if you didn't follow all those steps that I just outlined, this is what it looks like on a step-by-step basis. Okay? So for us to make a protein, the very top, we have to have nitrogen and other essential nutrients. They then have to have energy and sugars to be biologically converted. And notice there's two columns. So there's two columns of biological conversion. That's because the bugs that convert nitrogen are different than the bugs that convert other nutrients. Okay? You can't have one bug that converts everybody. It doesn't work. I like pizza. Bachi likes steak. Larry might like fish. Or maybe he's vegan. I don't know. Okay? But we have different foods that we all prefer, and the bugs do too. So some of them gravitate towards different things, different food sources, and they return that food source in the form of a converted nutrient. So if you don't have a diverse group, you don't have conversion of certain nutrients, certain elements, and certain chelates that later develop, okay? After that, so after we get the nutrition, after we have the energy, okay, and you can supplement energy with sugars, then we have to form an amino, okay? An amino with an R group and a carboxylic group, which comes from Troy blowing bubbles, getting the gas flow, okay? All of that then has to happen before we can make the aminos, okay? And the aminos, which we can apply and skip some steps, and that's great, but that's just a Band-Aid. The aminos are then what in turn leads us to build proteins, and proteins translate to our yield and test weight. So a lot has to happen before we can see the results on a yield monitor and say, we did something. But we miss all the steps, and we overlook all the nervous system and all the impingements before that to make sometimes quick and fast judgments and responses. Okay? There's another thing that plays into this, and this is something that we consider and that I use every day when we develop products, the BioGreen, the BioChop, and the MicroBoost. It's called thermodynamics. The equation up here is called ideal gas law. So this is how I use chemistry and physics to make sure that the MicroBoost you get is shelf stable, but is lightning in a bottle when it gets in the ground. Okay? So we use this, and you use temperature and ultraviolet light in our favor to work with these reactions so that we can get you something that is liquid available and has all the energy. Okay? But I want to point out a couple things. One, degradation, UV degradation, happens and affects microbial life on the surface. So when we're talking residue digesters like BioChop, okay, they seem to have better luck when you can apply them and then get them incorporated or work them into a system where there's other tissues going on to protect them. The results seem to indicate that that is better. Okay? I don't know if you can see this, but at the bottom, we also see that at night, okay, at night when respiration happens, temperature is lower, which slows microbial decay, and precipitation is higher, so there's water. Well, that's an advantage. Okay? That means that if you're following the logic here, it would indicate to us that you have a much better opportunity to apply things, especially biologically based, at night when you have temperatures working in your favor, you have moisture working in your favor, and you don't have UV degradation. Okay? That's also when respiration happens the most. So you got plants actively intaking what you're putting down. I'll leave that there for a second. Why is this all important, though? Okay? Believe it or not, this is a statistic that I've had in several times as I've been able to speak. Okay? 98% of all the microbes in the soil are actually probiotics that also live in our gut. So if you literally were to go out into the soil, and I don't recommend you do this, it doesn't taste good, or you might have friends like Larry that take you to a field that just had manure applied, and you take your spoonful of soil and you go to eat it, you're going to get more than just a probiotic inoculum. But point being, okay, if you ate that spoonful of soil, you'd have a 98% chance that those microbes in there are probiotic. Okay. I'll give you some examples. There's 3 that I use and incorporate that are public information on the labels that we select, and all of the bugs that we select in BioGreen and BioChop are all probiotic, so they're labeled, they could be used in human health or in plant health. They serve a dual purpose, they're safe, and they're readily available to work to convert nutrition to the plant and use the gaseous availability that we have to do that, okay? So I don't put anything in the mixes that is harmful for a reason. We want this to be safe and effective. Okay, but here's some examples. Bacillus subtilis, very common. Okay, in humans, that deals with lipid metabolism and gut health, and in plants, it serves as a cellulose degrader, so it'll break down cellulose. Okay, so in our bodies, when we eat salads, these are one of the guys that break that salad down into usable material and gas. Okay, Lactobacillus plantarum, this is one that in humans will treat eczema and seasonal allergies, and in plants increases germination and shoot growth. And then the Streptococcus thermophilus, this is one that in humans produces lactic acid in your gut, so it helps you to digest things like meat and proteins. And in plants, produces an enzyme called urease, which breaks down urea. So if you're applying urea, this guy is one that will help you convert that into something usable instead of just having the enzyme present. Okay? So all of these things have dual purposes. Okay? We do really good at recognizing when our body is deficient in something, and there's several parallels in the plant world that we overlook, when in actuality, okay, it's right in front of us. We can see some of the same trends happening, and we know what to do in our bodies, but we don't necessarily react the same way in plants. Okay? The ratio of human cells, okay, get this, human cells, every skin cell, every hair cell, every nail cell, every eye cell, if you were to count all of them and then collect a ratio, the ratio would be 1 human cell to 10 microbial cells. So there's literally 10 times the amount of microbes in our gut that there are for every cell in our body. That's insane, okay? And that happens in the ground too. So when we need that many workers to try and do some of these things that we've talked about, that chain of process, and we apply things that inadvertently decrease the population, we're literally hindering the amount of production we can get, okay? And then the EPA and the Health Institute also released an article that highlighted the fact below in the green that says the healthiest 7% of the population had the most diverse microbiome. So what we're saying is the more different species, the more people you have working, the better the results are going to be. Just like us, the more people we have in a room, the more information we can share, the more that we can learn, the better our results are going to be. So it's never wrong to try and develop a natural way to include compost or green waste or things like that to enhance the bugs and the populations that you already have in place in your soil. How does it work? Microbes produce enzymes. They're a catalyst for that redox reaction, which we highlighted about being important, and linked to ATP and protein production. They produce exudates that act as chelators, okay, which we'll get to, and then they also produce carbon dioxide for the plants. They play a bigger role than a lot of times we give them credit for. Okay? And one of the things that works against this, that we all use, unfortunately, is herbicides. So I get this a lot. It's something that Larry and I talked about when we hear in the fields, and the question is, how do we deal with it? We know that in our world, we have to manage some of these weeds, and a lot of us are using herbicides. So what can we do to try and offset some of the toxins that are in place already? So here's the general approach that I have, and we can talk more if you have some specific questions, but herbicides are typically very salty and caustic in the form of oxidative stress and saline stress, okay? So to fix this, you need vitamins, you need the help of microbial activity to break it down. You need water quality source of water, which Larry alluded to earlier, and I'll expand on. Amino acids help, chelation helps, stress relief, and reduced usage, obviously, of the herbicide, okay? So it's a stress on the plant, and much like what we talked about earlier with reducing stress in people, if you know that there's herbicide injury going down, be proactive about it and include some products like the MicroBoost with the sugars to offset some of the stress that you're going to get. Vitamin C is very important. Does anybody here test for vitamin C content in their plants? Okay. If you don't, I would encourage you to look at vitamin C and Brix as a measure of how much you're putting out in the form of sugars and vitamin production, okay? Just vitamin C, and we can go down the list, just vitamin C is linked to aphids, leafhoppers, and diseases like downy mildew and blight when it becomes deficient. So it's one that certainly should be pushed and enhanced to encourage not only disease prevention, but protein synthesis and things like that. Okay. Going down the list, we talked. So if we go back to how do we deal with the herbicide toxicity, we talked about vitamins. We talked about microbes, so supporting the microbes by giving them long and short chain sugars. Something with carbons, okay? Amino acids, bugs can use the aminos, raw materials, and then obviously organic matter can work in your favor too. But I really like, especially when we're talking sugars, to include multiple forms, okay? The reason for that is that obviously, like we talked about, bugs have different preferences in food. So if you're only constantly ever adding white sugar to your table, or to your mix, table sugar to the tank, that does check a box, but it doesn't check all the boxes. You want all the guys working for you, not just a handful. So a blended type of sugar or a balanced product like the MicroBoost that would have 4 or 5 sugars in there is going to be more effective than just straight sugar or straight molasses. Go ahead. Cover crops have their advantages too. Not only are they going to help with the sugar, okay, but in the right settings, they will also draw new species into the soil profile. Okay, that's a different food source, different bugs are going to come in. That's going to improve water holding capacity. They're going to improve aeration, and then it's going to change that carbon to nitrogen ratio, which takes a little bit of the workload off the bubbles. Okay. Water quality. Water quality is huge in our world. It's one of the main components of the Physicro products. We use Personova water systems for a couple reasons, and Vach is here today, can answer questions on that if you have any. But we use the Personova water because A, it's got the right frequency, so it is much more absorbable into the plant and into the root zone and soil surface than traditional water, but it's also higher oxygen content, and it is aligned with the frequencies, the natural frequencies of the biology. So to try and quantify that, I did a study last year where we took a couple strains and just tested them in RO water and then in the Personova activated water. Okay, so Bacillus subtilis, which we talked about before, that's the one that in our bodies breaks down salad, in the field breaks down crop residue. In traditional RO water, okay, in a 48-hour time frame, we were able to get about 18 billion colonies. Okay? In the same time frame, with the same food source in Personova water, that number went up to 26 billion colonies in the same 48 hours. So in just Bacillus subtilis, there's a 44% increase in the same time frame. So then I did the same study with a multi-strain mix, okay, to include the full scope biologicals that we're using. And with traditional RO water, we're about 121 billion colonies in that in the 84-hour time frame that we carried this out. And in the same mix, same feed source, same temperature, the Personova water yielded 152 billion colonies in the same time frame. So it was much more effective at being a biological carrier. Question?
Have you done that testing with some different typical tap or well water?
Yes. Yeah. So the question is, have we done the testing with different tap well water? Yes. I have a whole thorough study on that.
I'm assuming that trend is the same or worse?
The trend is the same. So the Personova water was always about 35% higher than the other sources. The worst, actually, unfortunately, was the municipal water because of all the chlorines and salts that are in it. But well water, RO water, and filtered water that were just treated were about that 35%-ish range less in growth than the Personova was. So we utilize this water for all of the products that we make at Physicro because it was such a good carrier and because it is so much more absorbable to the plant. Because we want you to get 100% of the stuff into the plant that you're trying to apply. It's a great question. One of the things is amino acids. So this one, we make a product called Accelerate Pro, which is an amino acid and antioxidant blend. And the reason that we do this is because of that chain that we talked about earlier, trying to get the plant to build proteins more effectively. So sometimes you have to kind of give it a supplement to speed it into gear. So I'll skip through, for the sake of time, some of the reasons, but there's a whole list of why amino acids are very important to include in your program if you aren't already doing so. Okay, so a couple of those that I'll hit: obviously growth, obviously nitrogen acquisition, okay, reduced stress and disease pressure, stress reduction, huge, improving photosynthesis, and it acts as a biostimulant. So it's a win-win. You put on aminos, you're building proteins, you're reducing stress, and you're also supporting some of the microbes by giving them some pre-digested things to work on, if you will. Okay? In the plant world, proteins, we need them for photosynthesis, we need them for pollen, we need them for calcium, and then obviously test weight and grain feed. Chelation, I'm going to gloss over this. I know we have kind of a time-sensitive day today, so we'll hit through, but chelation is basically just fancy lingo for saying it's something binded to something else. So if you're using chelated materials, that's a help because you're able to get that into the plant a little bit more effectively. So all of the Physicro products, BioGreen, BioChop, MicroBoost, and Accelerate Pro are all chelated naturally, so there's binders in there that will naturally help to get the material with the water into the plant in a much more efficient and absorbable fashion than just traditional water. Okay? I talked about the four. I'd like to hit them real quick, and then I'll go over some field data from this year so that you can kind of get a point of reference. Physicro, we have 4 products. BioGreen is our flagship. This one is designed to not only convert macronutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but it's also got our detox properties in it. So this is the guy that is the workhorse products that does all of the nutrient solubilization and works on some of the contaminants. So it's working on salts, metals, the chemistries, and some other things. There's some other goodies in there that we can talk about off camera privately. But I know how Larry operates with these things, so I don't want somebody on YouTube hitting me up telling me that we said things that we didn't mean or couldn't back up. So thanks, Larry, for that. Appreciate it. Okay. Biochop. This is our residue degrading product. So we've got the bugs in there that break down the residue, and there's some additives in the mix that help to sustain them during times where there's little food or cold temperatures to try and maximize breakdown that way. Micro Boost. This is our top selling, most popular product. This is our 5-way sugar blend that was designed with the idea that you could help generate some gas flow. So you're getting 5 different types of sugars, some carbohydrates, some natural acids, some vitamins, and some carbon dioxide all in one product that can be applied at any time and works really well in conjunction with the BioGreen and Biochop, and does an excellent job at relieving stress. So we have folks in the room that have used this, several of you have, especially during times where they're adding herbicides or other fertilizers to offset that stress. So it's
That should be in the tank every spray operation you make.
I didn't say it, but I agree. Okay. Yeah, if you're making a trip across the field, dollar for dollar, Micro Boost is worth every penny to offset stress, to build sugars, and to limit some of the reactions you're going to have with in the herbicides and the chemistries. Accelerate Pro I hit on, that's the amino product. This is newer, so it's aminos and antioxidants, again made with the water. And I'll hit real quickly, there's questions that I get a lot. How do I maximize this? You know, I've been sold biologicals before, I've had mixed results. I hear you, and I want to encourage you to take a look at what we've got going on, because this isn't chemistry, this isn't biology, this is incorporation of all of that physics, biology, chemistry to make one line of products that includes all that. So little things you can do that would help. Use it as quickly as you can, use it fresh, store it out of direct sunlight, okay? Keep it consistent, don't let it freeze, don't have exposed openings. So if you're not going to use it, put the lid back on it. You don't want contaminants getting in, other bugs getting in and fighting some of the good guys ahead of time. And I try to avoid tank mixing this ahead of time for extended periods of time. Okay, I'm not talking about I need to go out in the field in an hour, I'm going to go ahead and blend it off. I'm talking about we're going to go ahead and blend the mix and we're going to go out next week. Okay, you want to use this as quickly as you can so that they're getting to work right away. Okay, and the proof is in the pudding. So I'd like to share with you some field trials that we had from this year, and a couple of the folks are here today, so I might mention them and give them a shout out, and if you guys would like to give testimonials, I'll open it up to that too. We did a field trial this year in Seymour, Wisconsin. Troy is here. This was through Tilth Agronomy, so it was a third-party study. Compared to a control of 6-24-6, Physigrow at 1 pint Micro Boost and 1 pint BioGreen and Furrow, okay, yielded 221.76 bushels per acre ahead of the 214.14 that the 6-24-6 control yielded. So that was a net return of 7 bushels per acre, and I used $4.30 at our price point. I know that can fluctuate, but at $4.30 minus the cost of the program, that was a net ROI of $26.77 to the farmer per acre in Wisconsin. In Lewiston, Chris Sauer and his family are here today, so thank you for sending us this data on that. And Chris, if you guys want to attest any of this, we'll be happy to do that. But this was from Lewiston, Minnesota. So Chris sent us a trial where they ran this against 6-24-6, correct? Okay. And our program, again, a pint of Micro Boost and a pint of the BioGreen and Furrow with no 6-24-6, and the program was a 242 bushel average compared to a 229.9 bushel average. So 12 bushel difference in corn. So at $4.30 minus the cost of the program, that's a $44 return. Okay. And one thing I'd like to point out is The data, if you look, the data with 624.6 in the mix versus without, the data shows that we actually did better in situations where there was less fertility in place. So that was interesting. That's something that stood out. That's something that we're working towards to try and reduce the synthetic. So I was very pleased to see that, we're holding true and we're seeing some of those results come through for us. Here in Webster City, if you have not been to Larry's plant, all of the bugs that we're talking about are made here in Iowa, that stay in Iowa, are made here in Webster City in Larry's facility. So if you haven't had a chance to go see that, I would encourage you to see the water system, see our product, see how it's made, know where your stuff is coming from, know that it's made here, know the people that are making it, and get familiar with what's actually taking place, to see it. And then this is, the results here speak for itself. So this, a little bit older data, but here in Hancock County, Iowa, we had 15.4 bushel response on some corn and about a 7 bushel response on some meat. Yield is great, and that's paying the bills, but a lot of times we talk about this, being more than just yield and money. So I want to prove that. We're here to fix the whole problem. So got some pictures and some SAP tests. This is a SAP test. How many of you have done SAP tests? Okay, a few. If you haven't, something to take a look at. This is like a blood test for people. So they take some SAP, you get a baseline for where you're at. Okay. This is a conventional farm. So we did a side-by-side here. This is from Iowa. Okay. We took a SAP test of conventional system, got results, and then SAP test from Physio products, a zone where Physio products were applied. This is really hard, so I'm going to point out a couple things. Where Physio products were applied, take a look at this. Old leaf versus new leaf, phosphorus took a jump. Okay? So what that's telling me is even if there was manures or synthetics or something applied, the Physio products are helping to solubilize and move the phosphorus into the tissue and make that into the plant. So we're seeing a jump in the phosphorus. Good news. Okay? Something else that we don't discuss a lot. Okay? I want to go back. Look at the aluminum levels in the conventional side. Okay, that's the pink on the far right. Okay, with and without. This is with Physio. So the aluminum here, where Physio was applied, was controlled. We didn't see a spike. We didn't see uptake. Okay. The other thing that we noticed was conventional on the left, and Physio on the right. EC, electrical conductivity, which has to do with toxicity, metals. Okay, contaminants getting in. The conventional side, as the plant was growing, EC increased. We got worse. And when we applied the Physio, the EC from the old to the new went down. So we're bringing the EC back into check. You want low EC, okay, to remove some of this. And then the last piece of information, okay, sugars. Conventional products, no change in sugars, no increase in photosynthesis, no increase in proteins, and then on the right, when we use the products, sugars and sugar levels increased significantly. So we're seeing the growth, we're seeing the contaminants controlled that we want to control, we're moving nutrients in, and we're building the whole program. So I'd like to close with a few things. We talked about nerve impingement. We all have nerve impingement. Myself, I'm feeling it today, and I'm limping around. So if you see me in the back, give me a little grace. But we all have nervous impingement. Find the limiting factor. Find what's holding you back in the system from getting through and having success as the whole program. Build the soil health. Focus on the microbiology. Reduce plant stresses. Okay? Provide energy to the plant. Use quality water, and share this information. Today, okay, like I said at the beginning of the speech, we want to learn, we want to laugh, we want to share, we want to take action, and we want to care for each other. So whether it's just plowing the field, make it the best round on the tractor that you can make it. If you're adding things to tank, check the ingredients twice. Make sure we're giving attention to detail. Every opportunity that we have to go into the field and talk to someone is an opportunity for us to do the very best that we can. And just like the Bernoulli principle, when we exert effort and the bag is away from our face, we get the ambient benefits of other people seeing what we're doing, of other people striving to be better, and when we apply products with good intentions that are designed this way, we can get other benefits, tertiary benefits, to work in our favor too. Be the Bernoulli and encourage those around you to take a look at what they're doing too. Jimmy Valvino on ESPN once gave a speech and said, a full day is when you can laugh, you can think, you can cry. And I'm adding one to that today by taking action. So I hope today we've laughed, we've got some thought, we care for each other, and we're going to take some action. And the very last thing that I'd like to say is something that I do and I close out every speech with, okay? You never know what's going to happen. So I want to encourage you today at some point to text 3 people and just tell them you're thinking about it. Encourage them, give them a leg up, check in and see how they're doing. You would be very surprised how when you start to do this little action, one simple task, it leads to other finished tasks and other completed missions and a positive attitude. And when you need it and you're feeling low, it's got a funny way, the Lord's got a funny way of returning the favor in some pretty unique situations. So I want to encourage you to do that. Text 3 people, tell them you're thinking about them, work hard, keep doing what you're doing, and learn all the time. Thank you.